All right, good people. We are live. We are ready for Bible study. This week, we are covering Genesis 23 and we are discussing the wife of the promise. Per usual, we are going to read through it. If you are catching me on another stream and you want to see my screen, you need to come over to YouTube. But nevertheless, you'll be able to follow along. We're going to read all the way through the chapter. This is actually a very short chapter, but always something to add, something else to look into, as far as the details in the stuff. So let's talk about Sarah tonight. I feel like we've been talking about Abraham. He's been the focus of the last 11 chapters since Genesis 12, and so Sarah gets the focus of this one. So on my screen, I am going to share Genesis 23, and we will read and get started. All right, so reading from the top, it says the burial of Sarah. Remember, Sarah is Abraham's wife. We have walked through Ishmael being born, Isaac being born, all the promises, the circumcision, Lot. We don't walk through all of this, and now we're in Genesis 23. And so this is the burial of Sarah. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There, Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then, leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, "Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial." The Hittites replied to Abraham, "Listen, my lord, you are an honored prince among us. Choose the finest of our tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in this way." Then Abraham bowed low before the Hittites and said, "Since you are willing to help me on this way, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me buy his cave at Machpelah, down at the end of his field. I will pay the full price in the presence of witnesses. I will have a permanent burial place for my family." Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly for all the Hittite elders of the town. "No, my lord," he said to Abraham, "please listen to me. I will give you the land and the cave. Here in the presence of my people, I give it to you. Go and bury your dead." Abraham again bowed low before the citizens of the land, and he replied to Ephron as everyone listened, "No, listen to me. I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field so I can bury my dead there." Ephron answered Abraham, "My lord, please listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver, but what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead." So Abraham agreed to Ephron's price and paid the amount he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, weighed according to the market standard. The Hittite elders witnessed the transaction. So Abraham bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah near Mamre. This included the field itself, the cave that was in it, and all the surrounding trees. It was transferred to Abraham as his permanent possession in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gate. Then Abraham buried his wife Sarah there in Canaan in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, also called Hebron. So the field and the cave were transferred from the Hittites to Abraham for use as a permanent burial place. All right, we're going to take it back to the top and we're going to walk it through. As I said, this is a sort of brief chapter, but I feel like I was able to definitely pull out some things that maybe are not so obvious. So we could just talk about this process because at this point in time, all of their life has pretty much happened, and you have Sarah who is at 127 years old, which means that Abraham, there are 10 years difference between them, which means Abraham is at 137 years old at the time. And, this is the end of their life. And so we're getting to learn about that process and explore a little bit about Sarah. We're going to be reflecting tonight about Sarah, the woman of the promise, is what this called. So back to verse 1, it says, when Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. Now we have looked at maps and maps and maps almost each week because I'll continue to show you all where they are in Canaan. It's pretty much the same area that we've talked about before. And remember, Abraham was called from Haran. So this information is it's like every detail that's provided is confirming small information that you may need if you ever needed to go find something. Like if you ever needed evidence about something, the details that the Bible gives us is going to confirm that. So it tells us how old she was, 127 years old, which is a wonderful, ripe age. If she's 127 years old and we know she had Isaac around 90 years old, that means Isaac is 37 at this time. Okay, so we know that Abraham is 137, Isaac is 37, Sarah is 127. She passed away in Hebron in the land of Canaan. So it's telling us again where they were. Remember, they are foreigners in this land. These are people who have, welcomed them in a sense, and they live as foreigners amongst Canaanites, different Canaanite tribes, if you will. So there, Abraham mourned and wept for her. So in the place that she died, there is mourning, there is weeping. Now I love that it mentioned that he mourned and wept for her, because sometimes in the process of someone passing away, sometimes we can quickly go to like a planning phase. Okay, these things have to be done. And Abraham got that done, but there was mourning and there was weeping. There was a time for grieving that, he allowed to happen. And our reaction to death should be similar as to what we see evidence in the Bible. Obviously, it's like a sad time, but it's not going to be an overextension of that, because she lived a long and happy life, and they're mourning and weeping for the time that she passed. And then we have so after he's mourned and wept for her, then leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial. So now we're moving to the planning phase that most people will go into. And I think in this day and time, we kind of move into that so quickly. It's almost like the way that the industry goes, but like somebody can pass away and then there isn't even enough time for really that information to hit and settle in before we're having to rush and plan a funeral. So I love that we kind of see how this sort of plays out with time. So it says he's talking to, so remember, he lives in Canaan. So in this particular area that he's living in is the Hittite group, the Hittite clan. So because he respects the land, whose land it is, he didn't just come in and take over. Because he knows he's a foreigner living in the land, he has to go and request land. He has to go and request something special. He has a relationship with them. He's doing things in the proper way. So he goes to the elders of this particular land area and he says, here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial. So he gives them the reason as to why he wants to buy the land. That's important. Every detail is important information. So he's not just trying to get it for anything. He's trying to give her a proper burial. And he knows that this is not his land per se, but he's asking to buy the land from somebody. And so out of respect for him, they respond and they say, listen, my Lord is a certain title that he's given, because Abraham, remember, he has a whole household. He is not just one man with a wife and a child that's living amongst them. No, Abraham bought massive servants. He is taking up a massive area of land. He's got all kinds of domestic animals that he's raising. He's got households of people who live among him. Remember when he went out to fight the kings of, like, he went out to fight for, it was the 5 kings against the 4 kings. They came from the Babylonian area. They came and fought all the area of like Sodom and Gomorrah and all those kings. Remember when Abraham went out to save Lot because Lot got taken? it was like 300, I think 18 men that he took along with him who were born into his household. So that tells you the massive scale of how many servants and how many people Abraham had working for him. So at this point, I mean, you're talking about easily hundreds and hundreds of people, men, women, children that he's got in his not command, but these people would have served him as his man, as their master, would have been loyal to him, because y'all have to remember that people were governed in like smaller groups, and somebody who was able to help protect you and your family, you're going to be loyal to. So not only could Abraham fight, but he had the resources and power to control the land, guard the land, help, raise livestock, a livelihood for people. They didn't have to be out in the wilderness on their own trying to make it. So it's a community of people. So he is regarded as the Lord, not capital L is what we would regard God is, or Yah is, Lord and Savior sort of thing. Not that capital L. This is Lord as in master, lowercase L. So listen, my Lord. So this tells you the type of respect that even the elders of that other Canaanite tribe had for Abraham. You are an honored prince among us. That's how he was treated, as a prince, because even though it wasn't his land, he had a nation of people with him. A nation is not just the land, it's the people. So he is a nation of people with him. So he is an honored prince. Choose the finest of our tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in this way. So they're telling him, hey, you want to buy land, but we want you to choose any tomb that you want to be able to bury your wife. We want to honor you um, with that possession of being able to give you one of our tombs. Nobody is going to turn you away and say you can't have this piece of land to bury here. So then this is Abraham's response. In verse 7, Abraham bowed low before the Hittites. Now, this is a gesture of honor, because this is respect. He's coming to the elders and he's requesting to buy land for a particular purpose, which is a burial site. The elders are saying with respect back, hey, you are treated as a prince among us. You have all these people. You're doing so much good. You can have it. And he's bowing low because this is another sign of respect. He's not trying to get into an argument with people, and he's not trying to cause any confusion. Abraham bows low before the Hittites. Now, this does not mean he's worshiping them as his God just because he's bowing low. This is a sign of respect. And he said, since you are willing to help me in this way, meaning since you are willing to give me land, any land that I would choose, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me buy his cave at Machpelah. So this tells us that it says down at the end of his field, I will pay the full price in the presence of witnesses, so I will have a permanent burial place for my family. So Abraham had some intention behind him going to ask the Hittite elders to purchase land. He was already prepared with land in mind that he wanted to buy. He didn't just go and ask for any land. He asked the permission to buy land. And then because they were willing to give him any land he chose, he already had in his mind whose land he wanted. There was nothing wrong with him going with that intention. And so we know also that what he's trying to do is he's also trying to develop a burial place for his family, because Abraham is preparing. He's not crazy. He knows he's getting older. Sarah just died. At some point, I'm going to pass away. We're going to need some place to be buried, because Abraham was instructed. This goes back to verse 1. He was instructed to leave Haran and go to a place that God would show him. He is in the land of Canaan. He has been promised this land of Canaan. Sarah has died in Canaan. He knows she needs to be buried in Canaan. Why? Because he knows he's not supposed to go back to Haran. He's not supposed to go back to what we would call present-day Iraq, because that is not the land that God has promised him. So he needs to be buried, and she needs to be buried and remain in the land that God has promised to give his descendants. So he has the future in mind when he's requesting this particular piece of land. He already know the part of land that he wants. And they said, we will give it to you. But see, he's kind of countering them and saying, I will pay the full price in the presence of witnesses. So I will have a permanent burial place for my family. I will pay the full price in the presence of witnesses. So I will have a permanent burial place for my family. He is willing to go full price. I don't want anything to be given to me. I want to pay for it. And that's how you gotta be. And we're gonna talk about that towards the end. Pay for what you have. Don't just take it for free. There's a reason why Abraham did not just want to take this land, but they were willing to give it to him out of honor and respect. So, verse 10, Ephron was sitting there among the elders, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly before all Hittite elders of the town. Now, this is important to speak publicly because guess what? What's said in private could be argued, oh, he said, she said, is being said publicly, is being requested publicly, he's being answered publicly. So everybody is under the same understanding of what transaction happened. Ephraim said, "No, my lord," he said to Abraham, because of the title and the massive household that Abraham has. Please listen to me. I will give you the field and the cave. Here in the presence of my people, I give it to you. Go and bury your dead. Now, this goes to show us how, I want to say, big maybe Abraham had gotten, because they want to just give him land. They have so much respect for Abraham, what he does, so much understanding of not just respect for him, really, it's really respect for his God, is what we have to understand. They do not serve the same God as Abraham, but they have been able to see and hear about all of the favor that God has placed on Abraham's life. When they went to Egypt, they know about that favor. The Amalekites, they know about their favor. Everywhere he goes, he's blessing. They know that he has fought for their people. He has, went to war or whatever with those kings that try to come and invade their land. Like, they understand really who Abraham is. And so because they see him through God's way of seeing him, they're treating him with a higher regard than they might do somebody else who's a foreigner who's trying to move into their land. So he's offering to give him the land that he has requested. Go and bury your dead. So they're not only reverencing his time of grief, they're reverencing like him and who he is in his position, and saying we want to honor you by giving you this thing. And that's a great position to be in. But here's Abraham's response, because I'm like, why are we talking about people going back and forth about buy this land, buy that land, buy this land, I'm gonna give it to you, buy this land, I want to give it to you. It's like they're going back and forth. Abraham again bowed low before the citizens of the land, and he replied to Ephron, they're in a public court situation. Is everyone listen? No, listen to me. I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field so I can bury my dead there. Abraham is insisting that he is able to buy it. If you're going to confirm that I can have it, let me buy it. Remember, he's representing at all times who God has designed him to be. So then it says, Ephron answered Abraham, my Lord, please listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver. But what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead. Okay, this is now it's another level. Not only is Abraham a Lord, meaning master, he's a friend of the people, of foreign people. He has dwelt well among them, and he is considered a friend. So Abraham agreed to Ephron's price and paid the amount he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, weighed according to the market standard. The Hittite elders witnessed the transaction. So remember how Abraham was insisting to buy this. Let me look it up because I forgot to do that. But 400 pieces of silver is a significant amount of money. And I think I looked it up, but I forget how much it equates to. So let's look this up. How much is 400 pieces of silver in the Old Testament? We're gonna get this estimate so we can see how much he was willing to part with. This is if he willing to part with this for land. Let's see how much this would have been worth back then. It says it's about 9 to 10.5 pounds of silver. In modern value, between 2,500 and 5,000. That would have been a significant amount of money. Um, oh, that's back then. Ooh, in today's economy, okay, so back then it would have been 20 between 25, and this is just a quick Google, y'all know, search. Between 25 and 5,000 would equate today to 600,000 to 624,000. That's how much that market value of that same amount of silver would cost. Wow, that is quite a lot of money. So let's go at the highest level and say that Abraham paid like $5,000 for this piece of land, which is why they were like, "Oh, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you because hey, we honor you and give this to you because this is a lot." Abraham was like, "No, I'm gonna buy you." So Abraham bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah near Mamre. This included the fielded cave that was in it and all the surrounding trees. It was transferred to Abraham as his permanent possession in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gates. Then Abraham buried his wife Sarah there in Canaan in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, also called Hebron. So the field and the cave were transferred from the Hittites to Abraham for use as a permanent burial place. Now, when I was thinking about that transaction that took place, and basically the whole chapter is, oh, I want to buy this. Oh, let me give it to you. Oh, I want to buy this. No, let me give it to you. Oh, I want to buy it for this much. All right, fine, you can buy it for this. Like going back and forth. And I was thinking about like, why was Abraham pushing so hard for him to buy the land when he could have been given the land? And then I also remembered that, like, okay, this is the first piece of property in the land of Canaan that was promised to him that he purchased. Remember, God said, I'm going to give you the land, but it's going to take some years. It's going to take, it's when your descendants are going to inherit the land. So he already knows it is going to be his, essentially, through them. He was insisting on buying this land because he wanted to use it as a burial place for his family. So I'm thinking, well, why would he buy it when it's going to be given him eventually? And so it kept nagging at me until I looked at a previous verse. When we were reading Genesis 14, there was a situation where he went and saved Lot. And because he had recovered Lot and all the possessions and the people that the king from the Babylonian kings had taken from the Jordan Valley kings, the Jordan Valley kings wanted to reward him. And so this is at the very bottom of Genesis 14. And it says, the king of Sodom said to Abram, remember his name was Abram back then, give back my people who were captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods you have recovered. So this is a situation where he has saved people who were captured into slavery to be taken back to these other kings' possession because they had stopped paying tribute. So they was like, okay, we're going to come take what we want. So they came and they took what they want, but Abraham and his men were able to go and recover it. That means that they got it back and they were able to walk away. Nobody died, and they was able to walk away from that situation and return back to the land. So he's like, all right, well, you can give me back my people, but all the possessions that you were able to capture, you can keep. Abram replied to King of Sodom. He says, before Sodom was destroyed, I solemnly swear to the Lord God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread or sandal thong from what belongs to you. I don't want any of your possessions. This is what stuck out. Otherwise, you might say, I am the one who made Abram rich. Otherwise, you might say, so what Abram didn't want to happen is that God has done all of these things. God Most High, Lord, creator of heaven and earth. He's making sure he knows and understands this is who I serve as God. I'm not going to take any of your possessions because I do not want you to attribute my success, my wealth, to you being able to give me possessions. You be able to claim at some point later on down the road that, oh, well, Abram was able to do this and take this in the land because we gave him anything. Abram wanted that to rely solely, that credit solely relied on God himself. God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, the Lord that he serves. He did not want any man to be able to attribute his success and say, oh, it was because we did it. In that same way, I believe that that's why Abraham was harping so much on being able to buy this land from Ephraim, because he did not want them to say, oh, we give you the land. And then some way down the road, what would have happened is Abraham would have been dead and gone. And the people of the Hittite group, the people whose land would have gotten taken over later on, would have said, well, we gifted you this land. Our ancestors gifted your ancestors this land. And now you've taken, like, you don't want anything to be misunderstood later on. So what Abraham did was he bought the plot. It's recorded in a deed. Everybody has witnessed that this plot was purchased with my hard-earned money, and nobody is going to be able to take it away from me, because you have permitted me to purchase the land. Not only did you permit me to purchase the land, I got it deeded, it's signed, and it's witnessed in front of all these people, so that nobody would be able to say otherwise, that the wealth, that they are the ones who made him wealthy with land in this case. So that's why I think Abraham was insisting on buying land. He doesn't want anybody, a Canaanite, to be able to say that they gave anything to him, because he knows that that is not pleasing to the Lord. The Lord has given things to him. The Lord has favored him. There is no need to attribute to man what God does. Okay, so now we know this whole chapter was really about burying Sarah. And so Sarah was able to be buried first in a place they were able to mourn her, grieve her. And I want to emphasize that that is a biblical process for us to follow. Mourning and weeping is okay when you are dealing with death. Being able to honor a person, giving them a proper burial, is okay to do, because it is honoring God. That's exactly what Abraham did for his own wife. He's preparing a place. He bought it in advance so that his family could be buried there. And so all of that is very biblical for us to do. And I'm not trying to sell a plot of land for a burial, but I'm just saying, like, if that's something that people do, it is understood, because that's what Abraham did. So let's do a recap real quick before we end on Sarah's life, because she had so many experiences that got dripped in the story of Abraham that I wanted to just pull out and show you when and where it happened, and like how old she was. So we know that obviously they got married when they were young. Remember, Sarai, or Sarah, she as her name, is Abram's half sister. Okay, so that little tidbit of information came out in two different instances, because remember, they went to Egypt, and he's like, tell them this is a godless nation. Tell them you're my sister. Because Abraham already knows, Abram at the time already knew how they was going to act. They were going to see her beauty, and they're going to want to take her, and they could kill him if that was not, if that was her husband. Because what happens is, when you marry somebody, you have to, this is not said, the dowry, you know, the transaction that would take place is like between the family. So you would need to get her, purchase, whatever, how you want to say it, from the family. So it would be respectful for you to do it if it was from the husband, the brother. But it's not, you can't take somebody else's wife. So, you know, they would have killed him to get to her if he would have said that he was the husband. Either way. So when Sarai moved from Haran, they were 65 years old. That was in Genesis 12. So they moved. Right after that, you know, the famine hits the land. So she's still about 65-ish, somewhere around that, within a year or two. And that's when the whole situation with Pharaoh happens. So this is just a timeline. All of these things is happening when they are up in age. You know, retirement, if you will, like today's standard. And this is their life is taking off in retirement, is how I see with Abraham and Sarah. Then when Sarah is about 76 years old in Genesis 16, this is happening when, remember, she gets into the argument with Hagar. Well, first she has Hagar to, you know, get pregnant and have a child for Abraham, have a son for him. But then into the argument because she started looking at her with contempt. So she's treated her harshly. Hagar ran away. That whole situation happened. Then Ishmael is born. Sarai is about 76 when this is happening. We know this because it tells us the age of Abraham, and we know from a later chapter how that they are 10 years apart. Then what else happens? Sarai's name changes to Sarah. This is 13 years later. 13 years later, Ishmael is already born, but stuff is not, it's not done yet. It's not over. Sarah is coming back into this picture as in somebody that's important. So her life is not over just because she's continued getting older. She continues to live on and continue the promise that God has given to her. This is not going to be a restriction on age because she's 89 and she can't receive a promise. So back in Genesis 17, this is happening where her name is changed from Sarai to Sarah at the same time that Abram's name is changed from Abram to Abraham. It still means the same thing, which her name means princess. Um, this is in Genesis 17. So then in Genesis 18, Sarah is about 89 years old. She's promised a son. Remember, he said this time next year. All right. Within that same time frame, the whole situation happens with Abimelech, where they moved to a certain area. I think it was Gerar, and the King Abimelech wanted to take Sarah as his wife. So the whole situation happened. It's almost word for word what happened with Pharaoh. Okay, lie to them, not even lie to them. Tell them you're my sister, which is true. And Abimelech took Sarah, kept her. There was a plague in his land of infertility. Found out that Sarah was actually married to him. Gave him back, and he was like, "Why you lie to me? Why you deceiving me?" He had to plead for his innocence to God. The whole thing. Okay, so that happens when Sarah is 89 years old, and I'm giving you the chapter references because in case any of this doesn't sound familiar to you, it is important to go back and read these stories. So it's all in Genesis. Then she actually has the son Isaac. She's 90 years old when Isaac is born. That's in Genesis 21. And then we have in Genesis 23, I should have changed this to Genesis 23, is when Sarah died, 127 years old, which means that she got to not only bear Isaac, and she got to raise him, and then she got to see him become an adult. At this point, he's not married, but I can only imagine as a mother how that would have been something beneficial for her to be able to bear him, like literally, as in her old age, she has a son, a miracle. She's past the age of having children, which to me reads like she doesn't have menopause or been in that age range for what is it, perimenopause or something like that. Then she would have had him, been able to raise him and see him grow up, see all that he becomes, and then see him become a man at that. And then Sarah passes away at 127 years old. And so if you just look at the latter half of her life, Sarah lived a very good and nice life. From 65 to 127, what's that, 60 years? 62? Am I doing that math right? 127 minus 65. Yeah, 62 years. 62 years of her life, all of these things happen. Of course, I'm pretty sure it's small things in between, but we get to hear about some of the bigger moments. 62 years of her life, all that happened. We cannot minimize God to do things by a certain timeline. And I think that that's hard for us to get out of, and it was hard for them even at this time to get out of. But as you grow in faith, as things continue to happen, I'm sure Sarah's faith grew. And it was changing in her mindset about being too young or not being able to do this thing. They was moving a whole household of people, traveling through the desert to a foreign country that they have no idea. They not even, the people who they're living around are not even similar to the people who they are used to being around. So I'm sure all of this happening and later in life it was continuing to be a challenge. But God did all of this in the latter half of her life compared to the earlier half of her life. And so never think that it is too late for you, because it wasn't too late for Sarah. So if he can do it for Sarah, he can do it for us too. So I'm excited to see how we all grow and learn from this word, and how we are just blessed because God is able to continue to do things that he wants to do. It's never going to be too much. So with that being said, I hope that you all enjoy your week. And please stay tuned for the lesson next week. We're going to continue to read more about Abraham this week. We're almost wrapping up Abraham, the Abrahamic era, if you will, which really starts to, the years start to kind of slow down and speed up and then slow down again with what's happening in the Bible. So the first part of the Bible, the first 11 chapters, I have to go look at my notes to see how many years, but that was a few thousand years that have gone by. At this point, it drastically is slowing down. And so we're getting almost like a year by year, every 5 year kind of play. You're looking at it from a decade perspective versus a millennial perspective on what's happening, or even a century perspective of what's happening. So I'm excited to keep on diving into the word, y'all. Have a great one.